Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you 5 insanely useful Logic Pro features that a lot of composers either overlook or just don't know about, but they can really speed up your workflow and help you arrange your projects a lot better. I'm going to be throwing some mouse clicks and keyboard shortcuts your way as well as we go through, so keep an eye out for those. And the features we're going to be looking at are markers, track alternatives, the arpeggiator, sections, and muting regions at the very end. So if you want me to go into more depth on any of these, please leave a comment below, and I'm quite happy to make a video to explain things a little bit more in depth if you like. And like and subscribe, always appreciated. Let's dive in. Right, first off, let's talk about markers. Now, these at the moment in this project, you can see are the coloured areas on the ruler that we've got up here. I've got intro, A build, breakdown, and outro. And these are really helpful to organize your project and even to put in at the very beginning before you've written a note so you know how you're going to structure your song. It could include vocal lines as well, so you might be verse, chorus, bridge, outro, things like that as well. So whatever you're working with, track markers are incredibly useful. Now here's first key command, G, opens up your global parameters, and this is where you assign your different markers. So if I just get rid of some of these, so the intro and the build, if I wanted to add one, what I do is click where I want it with the playhead, click the plus for a marker, and let's call it intro. Perfect. Go to the next section, click the plus, and A build. Now you'll notice these don't have pretty colors like the other ones, but nice simple one there. Option C brings up your color palette, so when you've got any of these regions clicked on, you can then just pick a color, and let's go for a cyan there, so you can visually see the different sections. If I collapse this by pressing G or clicking the collapse button up here, you notice they go to a sort of faded color, which is quite nice, so you can obviously see the ruler still below everything. And I'm going to need some headphones for the next bit so we can hear what's going on. But if I hold down shift and click one of these regions, it automatically puts the cycle range around any of them, which is really helpful. Instead of you doing this drag and drop to grab the correct cycle range, this can save a whole lot of time as well. So that's shift and click any of those regions. The other clever thing you can do is if you have a keyboard with a number pad on it, you can just press 1, 2, 3, 4, and it just goes along linearly from start to end the different tracks. There's other key commands, or you could go into your key command preferences if you don't have a keypad on the end of your keyboard. So if you're just on a MacBook, you can assign, I think, control 1, control 2, control 3. They tend to be quite safe ones to assign to those different operations, but you notice it automatically moves the cycle range. If I start playing this as well, and then I jump to number 3, which is going to be the breakdown, goes straight there, carries on playing. So really nice, quick way to organize your tracks, see what's going on, and move around them really quickly. Okay, let's talk about track alternatives. If you control click or right click on any of the tracks and you go down to your track header components, at the very bottom you will find track alternatives. If you turn that on, you will notice you get these little double arrows next to each track name. Now I've already done one for this lead spiccato, and if I want to change to a different alternative, all I do is click the little arrows, and you can see at the top I've got 2. One's called higher and one's called lower. Let's just navigate to the first section. In fact, I'm actually going to shorten that so we get straight to the... So that's one ostinato using a lower note. If I just click to higher, so I can audition a different version, and you can do this as many times as you like. So if, for example, I click on the little arrows and I duplicate again, it's going to copy the entire track. By default, it's just going to label them A, B, C, D, E, but you can go in and rename them to whatever you like. So let's call that Alt. Now when I click, you can see I've got 3 different versions, higher, lower, and the new Alt one. Another way to do this is if you do show inactive, this now shows all the different parts, but you can see the other alternatives are muted. The clever thing you can do now is there's this little power button here. If I select power, it highlights that particular version and it will play that one. And if you say, oh, actually that's the one I like, so we're going to go with the lower, I just click the little up arrow and now it is the active main track. If I was then happy, what I could do is hide the inactive ones, or indeed delete the inactive ones. So I'm happy with what I've done. I've finished doing the track alternatives and auditioning things there. We can move on to the next section. The final thing to say is that any track automation will affect all the different alternatives, but if you do region automation, that will be specific for that particular alternative. Also, if I now decide to hide that header component and turn off track alternatives, don't worry, if you've already made some, that option will still remain. Okay, let's talk about the arpeggiator. What I'm going to do is just add myself a software instrument. Let's just use some strings, pop strings will do. Okay, so the arpeggiator is in MIDI effects, which as you can see here is just below the EQ for the channel strip, and arpeggiator is in there. Now, in a very basic level, what this does is turns the notes you play on your keyboard into an arpeggio. Very basic, but we can do different variations. We can go up more than 1 octave. And depending on how many notes you play, you'll get different variations as well. Okay, all well and good, but what about if we, before that, put a chord trigger? So what's going to happen here is I'm pressing 1 note, and as you can see in the blue keyboard, and it's generating chords from the other notes. Okay, again, useful, but what if you don't necessarily want it in a major or whatever chord it's doing? Let's insert something else, the transposer. So we've got the chord trigger, so we're pressing 1 key. Now it's going into the transposer, and what we can do is pick our root. So I don't know, let's go for D Dorian. Nice example, because we can see it's highlighted all the different white notes which we know are in D Dorian. Now, if I press any note on the keyboard and it's not in D Dorian, the transposer is going to work out which note it should move to. So that's a C, that's a D, E. So that was just going up the C, D, E, F, G. If I change that from something obvious, like Locrian, it's now going to pick these notes, even if I don't play them. So when I press this E, it's choosing D sharp or F. And automatically going to that mode. So chord trigger is optional, or you can play the chords in yourself. You've got the transposer you can use with the chord trigger if you're trying to get a particular sound, and then the arpeggiator. Now, to record this, the best thing to do is to turn on whichever is the last MIDI plugin. You click record MIDI to track here. So that means after the arpeggiator has activated, that's what it's going to record. So if I go here and I click, let's solo this so we don't get everything else in. CD and A on the keyboard. And you can see, depending on how well you hit your timing, it has actually recorded the output for the arpeggiator. If you didn't put that on, all you would do is get you off. Let me show you. So I'm going to turn off record MIDI to track here and just show you. Now it's just recorded the actual notes I was pressing, not the individual ones that came out of the arpeggiator. That's fine, because when it plays back, it will use the arpeggiator again. But you can see the power of doing record MIDI, because now you can manipulate each of those individual notes. Okay, number 4, we're going to talk about sections. Now, some people don't even know this part of the toolbar exists. If I just go below this top grey toolbar and hover my mouse, you get a little divider icon. If I click and drag that, you get the extra toolbar, and it's these tools on this end that we're talking about. So different sections that we can use to help arrange. So for example, if I select all these tracks here, what I could do is just click repeat section. So we've got a second intro. Now that was nice and easy. What about if I actually wanted to repeat that intro later on somewhere? Well, I could do Command C to copy, and then later on here we could do insert section instead of repeat, so it's putting it somewhere else. Let's undo that. Also, what you often find yourself needing to do is extend a track or add some silence. At the moment this goes. Now I might think actually I want a little bit of a break there, and what you could do is do things like trying to highlight everything, move things along. But if this is a little bit earlier in the track, that's a bit of a nightmare. So what you can do is, if I just click and drag to select a bar, up here I can insert silence. So I've highlighted the area I want to be silent, click insert silence, bingo, everything's moved along. Then I think, oh, actually let's introduce some other elements earlier. See how that works. Okay, so same transition again. Obviously you play around with that a little bit more to make it a convincing swell into the outro, but I think you get the point. So really handy if you're trying to move things around instead of trying to click and drag to move things all the time. Those section options, especially if you're writing in chunks as it were, then they can be really, really helpful. And the final tip today is actually quite a simple one, but I don't see people using it, and that is, how can you mute a particular region? So if we just zoom in here a bit, if I want to not have the flautando violin, what people sometimes do is go, right, so I've clicked on that, which one is it? Okay, it's over here, let's mute it there. Okay, now it's not playing, there's no sound coming out of it. However, there is a much better way to do that, especially if you're working in quite a big project. Click on the particular region you're interested in muting, hold down Control and press M. It just mutes that region. It doesn't mute the entire track. If I do it for these high strings, you'll notice the ones before them, Control M, are not muted. So you don't have to get rid of the entire track on a particular region. So zooming out again, what I could choose to do is highlight everything that was in there. Control M turns them all off or mutes the individual regions. Now I'm just listening to the violins on their own. To reverse it, you guessed it, Control M, bring the different elements back in. Let's just put vocalize back in there. So great way to audition different things, and bearing in mind we can still go back and the other parts of the tracks have not been affected by this. So a great way of building up your tracks and keeping things nice and organized. Okay, that's it for today. If you want a deeper dive into any of these particular hints and tips, happy to do them. Stick them in the comments. Like and subscribe, always appreciated. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.